Hello guys, it's the Wandering Rogue. Let's jump into today's video topic. So recently Ubisoft has had a massive decline in their stocks, going from one of the biggest companies to a complete joke. And for a company this big in the gaming space, it makes you question just how bad it's gotten for them. And I want to talk about really quickly just what exactly happened to them and the problems that have persisted over the years. So let's waste no more time and jump into the topic. This is probably the first major reason as to why Ubisoft is currently on a massive decline. If you don't know, the CEO has been very vocal in his animosity towards physical media. He went as far as to say that gamers should just accept that they will not own their own games, which obviously for a lot of people is not great. From my personal experience, I actually really like physical media a lot. I currently still have a Switch, and while I do mostly play on PC, the idea of having physical media is still always better for me. Not to mention that Ubisoft has been very bad at how they handle games that are eventually going outdated. One good example of this is actually the Crew that Ubisoft made. If you don't know, recently the Crew was shut down and it started a massive petition online for a lot of people, and it really sparked a debate as to whether or not gamers should have full right to own their games physically. Not to mention that even now, physical media versus digital media is still being very heavily scrutinized. One good example is actually the recent law that California has passed, citing that digital games cannot be considered the same as buying a physical game, and you can't even use the terms buy when it comes to these online stores. Not to mention, Ubisoft is especially bad at this because I'm pretty sure you guys probably already remember this, but they were threatening to close accounts that haven't been logged into in a year, just because, I guess. And on top of that as well, these are several games that people are just gonna lose access to simply because you didn't log into your account in a year. But regardless, Ubisoft has had some really bad service as of late, but I mean, this could all be excused as long as the games are good. I mean, they are good, right? Alright, this one's going to be a little bit more personal since I do have a lot to say regarding the topic of their games. So, I'm actually a massive fan of Ubisoft in the beginning. There's a lot of series I'm really big on or just know a lot about. One particular series happens to be Assassin's Creed. Now, a lot of people have mixed feelings for Assassin's Creed, which is understandable. I personally started off with the first Assassin's Creed game. Altair is by far one of my favorite characters in video games, and ever since then, they've been making really good games. Unfortunately, though, I've actually stopped playing the series after the fourth game. Not because I hate the series now, more so just because I sort of just dimmed out of the series since I want to play other stuff. Since back then, this is when I was actually getting into RPGs, actually. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because over the years, Assassin's Creed has kind of not been as great as it could have been. The series after Black Flag, which, by the way, I think it's a really good example of an amazing pirate story. I really recommend that one if you have not played it yet. But what I am trying to get at is after Black Flag, the series has kind of been on a massive decline, and many of the games have just been very mediocre. Now, I know a lot of people do like Odyssey and Valhalla for them trying new things, but in my personal perspective, I thought those games were pretty mediocre, especially since it has nothing to do with the main storyline of Assassin's Creed anymore. In fact, these guys aren't even assassins anymore, and it takes place even before the Assassin Brotherhood was even founded. And Mirage, I actually have almost no idea about. I think it was one of the Return of Form games, but I digress. Now, the new game is coming out called Assassin's Creed Shadows, and Ubisoft was planning a massive event for this at Tokyo Game Show. However, as you'll see soon enough, these have been very bad for them. Now, I'm going to ignore the whole political side of everything, but one big complaint that people had was the main character was black. And obviously, for a game that's supposed to take place in feudal Japan, there is no reason to really cast something like that as a samurai, especially since samurais are supposed to be these high class noble warriors. Not to mention that during these events, Ubisoft has been very weird when it comes to their Japanese representation. It feels like, for the most part, they don't understand anything really about Japanese history, nor try to speak with the right people regarding that kind of thing. Not only that, but they've been very ridiculed by the Japanese community, and because of all these reasons, Ubisoft has effectively chosen to not go to the Tokyo Game Show and have actually delayed the game to next year. Now, this would be fine. However, it just so happens to be that there's another Japanese game in a very similar concept that also happens to be releasing next year, and that happens to be none other than Ghosts of Yotai, the successor to the critically acclaimed Ghost of Tsushima back in 2020. This is going to be a massive bloodbath for Ubisoft, let's just say, and it doesn't help that this year was pretty bad when it comes to their other releases. Let's start things off with Skull and Bones. I really have no idea what they were planning with this, especially with how expensive the game was at launch. And now the game is just discounted by like 50-60% during major sales. The other game I was unsurprised failed was Star Wars Outlaws. Now, I'm actually a massive Star Wars fan myself, but the fact that Outlaws was just not interesting me was not great. But to be fair, I haven't been too big on Star Wars ever since Disney bought the series. And I feel like a lot of Disney IPs have just been declining, but that's a story for another day. Regardless, Star Wars Outlaws did not do as well as it could have, and you could honestly blame it on Ubisoft for what they did. Now, let me preface this by saying that video games have never been cheap. It's an expensive hobby for all of us, but recently in Ubisoft's case, it just makes you scratch your head and question, wait, what is this is way too much. They have locked down several parts of the game for no reason and then just charge a premium just on top of that. Look at Star Wars Outlaws, for example. The game isn't even out yet, and not only is it being charged for $100 if you want everything in it, but you need to also buy DLC for when the game comes out. Why are you charging for DLC now? The game isn't out yet, and no one has any idea as if the game's going to be good or bad. And most likely scenario, it's going to be bad. Not only that, but I already mentioned Skull and Bones previously, and Skull and Bones had the exact same issue at launch as well. And funnily enough, that game was not even complete at launch either. It required a day one patch, like all other Ubisoft games recently. Now, on top of that as well, it's also very heavily discounted now too. You know, back in my day, I didn't need a day one patch to play Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I didn't even need DLC. I had everything in that game at launch. Didn't need anything else other than that. I mean, come on. This is just getting ridiculous at this point. And Ubisoft's bad habit of making games that are just unfinished kind of makes you question as to why one of the biggest publishers on the entire planet right now is getting beat out in quality by indie games, which have budgets of nothing and are sometimes made by one team or one developer. In conclusion, Ubisoft is definitely not in a great place right now. What was once one of the major publishers out there in the gaming space has been devolved into what it is now. I don't really want to see Ubisoft struggle this poorly again, and it does seem like this inevitable decline should hopefully stop when they start to realize that making good games eventually do sell, despite the lack of marketing or the lack of big names like Star Wars. I would like to see them try to innovate more, but that doesn't really seem likely anytime soon. But in conclusion, I do hope Ubisoft improves. I want to apologize for the length of this video now. I do understand that this is a lot longer and you'll probably want to hear someone ramble on for a topic like this. But if you guys are interested, I am free for a discussion. You can always comment on this video, like, subscribe, do all that kind of stuff. And I'm definitely going to be looking through all the comments. I really want to thank you so much on the first video. It didn't really get the best amount of views, but I'm at least glad because it shows that these videos are definitely going to be coming out more often. So, yeah, this is the Wandering Rogue signing off. Peace.